All right, guys, as we get into tonight, I want to talk about three people, and we're going to talk about these three people the whole rest of the night tonight. And sometimes when we're thinking just like using our imagination, it's really helpful to have some concrete, visible example. And so I'm going to have three dudes help me out. Guys who are not embarrassed being in front of people, and it'll be okay. All right, Trini, I'm going to need you. You're going to be number one, AJ number two, Jaron number three. This actually works out perfectly. All right. No, just chill. But I am going to, hey, when I point to you and call you out, Trini, this is you two, hey, you can't be my dude if you're over here talking. Anyways, I'm going to point to you or call your name, and when that happens, I'm going to need you to stand up to be our visual representation and reminder. Because these three people are who we're going to be talking about this whole night. Three dudes who had one thing in common. So, over here, that's you. Over here, this guy is a disciple. This dude loves Jesus. He doesn't just love Jesus, he devotes his life to spending time with Jesus, to being used by him. He performs miracles by the power of God. He's trustworthy and spends all of his time among other God-loving, honorable men. That's our disciple. That is the man. Sit down. This guy's a thief. This guy doesn't care that much about the needs of others. This guy's pretty much ruled by his own selfish desires, always looking at what he can get, not what he can do for anyone else. And his name is a thief because stealing is just a habit to him, just happened naturally. That's who he was. You sit down. Over here, the worst of them, the traitor. The traitor betrayed everything he believed in. All the people that he was close to betrayed him. As a matter of fact, led to a lot of their demise. He abandoned all of those people closest to him. Everything he believed in, he rejected. Sit down, traitor. These three guys had one thing in common. Well, actually two, technically. First thing they all had in common was compromise. The second technicality is that they were all actually the same person. And that's the person that we're going to talk about tonight. The disciple, the thief, the traitor. They were the same guy. His name is Judas. We talk about him, I don't know how much we talk about him. I work at a church, so I feel like it's fairly common knowledge. I don't know how much you guys feel like you hear about this guy. Now, Judas is famous for betraying Jesus, but there's so much more to this guy than I think we realize or think about. He was these three men. He was a disciple, he was a thief, he was a traitor. So he was a disciple. He walked with Jesus. Jesus had a lot of disciples. We talk about the 12 a lot, but I don't know if you guys realize that he had a lot more than 12 disciples. There were a lot more than 12 people obeying him, following him. However, he specifically called out 12 of them to be with him all the time. He sent these 12, among others, out to heal people, to cast out demons, to bring about the kingdom of God. And Judas, the disciple, he was the man. He walked with other guys who loved God and loved God himself. He was all in. He wasn't like just a rando walking the streets and Jesus like, hey, you guy, come follow me. And he didn't have his heart right. Judas was a disciple. And like I said, he performed miracles just like all the other disciples. Stand up, lazy disciple. He walked with the other ones, watched these do amazing stuff. So I'm going to read, stay standing, Mark 3:13 through 19. And he, Jesus, went up on the mountain and summoned those who he himself wanted, and they came to him. And he appointed 12 so that they would be with him, and he could send them out to preach. This guy. And it says, and to have the authority to cast out demons. This guy. And he appointed the 12. Simon, who he called Peter, James and John, Andrew, Philip, Bartholomew, Matthew, Thomas, James, Thaddeus, Simon, and Judas Iscariot. This guy. And it adds, he was the one who betrayed him. All right, sit down, disciple. Judas was used by God. Again, he was one of the 12 walking with Jesus, watching all the miracles that we see in all the Gospels. Judas is right there watching these things happen. Watching God just do insane things. The healing of the 5,000, the feeding of the 5,000, healing the blind, Lazarus being resurrected from the dead. The disciples right there, watching it all happen. He also, we find out later, he was trusted to be the treasurer for Jesus and company. The disciples, he was the money guy. So we don't know like what happened for this guy to get chosen, the disciple, but he must have been trustworthy. I don't think they were like, whoever draws the short straw, like, you're it. And again, it wasn't just a random dude that's like, oh, I guess you should do the money. He was chosen to be the treasurer among them. So it leads me to believe he must have had some like stewardship or trustworthy qualities that the disciple was picked to be the treasurer for Jesus and the disciples as they went around. Now, I mentioned these three guys are the same guy. So Judas the disciple was also Judas the thief. Stand up, thief. So the thief, I mentioned, ignored the needs of others. He's ruled by his own desires, always looking at what he could get. Stealing was a habit to him. And it's a crazy thing because stealing, like ultimately, stealing is a sin against God. So really, it's like we're trying to rob God whenever we steal. But he, in the most direct way possible, was literally stealing from God. Jesus is right there. The money is for them to, live and do their stuff. And he is stealing from it. Unfazed clearly by this, we find out in John 12, 1 through 6. It says, 6 days before the Passover, Jesus came to Bethany where Lazarus was, whom Jesus raised from the dead. So the thief, the disciple, they watched this happen. They knew what God had done with Lazarus. So he's there. They're back at the house where Lazarus was raised from the dead. They made him a dinner there. Martha was serving. Lazarus, now revived, was reclining at the table with Jesus. So Mary took a pound of this very expensive perfume of pure nard, super, super expensive, years of wages, this bottle of perfume. And it says, and she anointed the feet of Jesus with it and wiped his feet with her hair. So this just insane, doting upon Jesus, worshiping him because he's God. And Judas, the thief, one of his disciples, the one who intended to betray him, said, why was this perfume not sold for 300 denarii? All the insane money that it's worth. And the proceeds given to the poor. Now he said this not because he cared about the poor, but because he was a thief. And as he kept the money box, he used to steal from what was put into it. The thief had developed a habit of stealing. It was just a normal thing. And the way that it gets brought up in that verse, he used to steal from what was put into it. It was just like a kind of common occurrence. And he not only had he gotten used to stealing, they trusted him. I imagine for the thief, at first, it was probably a difficult thing to steal from these are his brothers. These are his closest friends. They literally spend every waking moment together for years. Jesus, his Lord, stealing knowing that he's taking from them. Knowing that whenever issues of how are we going to do this, how's this going to work out, who's paying, whatever, he's the guy. And he's knowingly taking from them, and it was a normal thing. So much so that this guy, the audacity of this dude. In this moment, in front of Jesus, says, why is she wasting that on Jesus? We could sell that and give it to the poor people. And knowing in his heart, he does not care about anyone that's poor. He's just like, I can take a lot of that money. That's a lot of money. I wonder what I can do with that. You can sit down, thief. Thank you. And so I wonder, how much money did the thief handle before the temptation came? How long did it take before that first time that he was willing? I'm sure the thought had entered his mind tons of times, like temptation does with all of us. But at some point, he decided, I'll take it. Maybe it's just a little bit. Maybe we have a lot extra, and it's just for something that I want, would be really cool to have. It's not going to affect anything. Was it always there? Had he been tempted to steal from the very beginning? Did he start worrying about how this would work out for him? Maybe he was worried that following Jesus wasn't actually going to take care of him, and he needed to have some money put aside in case this all failed. I don't know. I'm curious, though. I'm also curious, what is he doing with this money? You're with the disciples and Jesus all day. It's not like you can go buy some really fancy camel or some really flashy robes and no one's going to notice. What is he doing with it? Just getting some extra food that no one sees? It boggles my mind. I don't know. But like I said, it got so bad. He got so used to stealing, became so comfortable with it, that he had the audacity to, in front of Jesus, who he's seen Jesus call lots of people out for hidden inner thoughts, and is like, we shouldn't spend that on Jesus. We should sell that and keep that money to give to the poor. Then we have the traitor. The traitor who betrayed those closest to him, everything he believed in. Like I said, he brought about a lot of their deaths. He abandoned all the principles of his mentor and leader and God. Right after the perfume incident, this guy, Matthew 26, 14 through 16, says one of the 12 named Judas went to the chief priests. These are the guys who hate Jesus. They're the guys that have had beef with Jesus from the very beginning, have been looking for ways to eliminate him. He goes to them and says, what are you willing to give me to betray him to you? And they set out for him 30 pieces of silver. It's a lot of money. And from then on, he looked for a good opportunity to betray Jesus. So he went from the disciple, and he was a disciple, and he became a thief. And he lived some time as a thief, we don't know how long, until he became the traitor. And it wasn't a one-time failure. We sometimes look at Judas and are like, oh man, he messed up big time with that decision he made. He had a series of compromises that led him to be this guy. He had a hardening of his heart so cold, so hard, that he decided this day, again, I don't know how much he thought about this, but he decided, I'm going to go find the chief priests. I know that they've been coming after Jesus. I know that there's beef there. I know that they would love an excuse to get rid of him. And he's walking with Jesus. He's living with Jesus, continually stealing from him, but he's with them all the time, watching him be God. And decides, I'm going to go find them. And he says, how much are you willing to give me to betray him to you? It says something that he approached them. It's one thing if that temptation plopped on his lap and he was just too weak. But he had a series of compromises that led him to the point of, I'm not going to wait for any more opportunity. I'm going to seize one. I'm going to go find them and see how much I can get. Thanks, Traitor. You can sit down. It says something about the strength, the level of his compromise to get to that point. They're all three the same dude. And it's so easy to think about Judas as the worst guy in the history of the world. But we all know how this compromise thing works. Some of you guys are exceptional students, and I'm proud of you. That's not something that I had. So some of you identify this. When I think of this pattern of compromise, this is the best example that comes to my mind. Teacher tells me I have a paper due in 3 weeks. I'll do a little bit of work over the next 3 weeks. I'm not going to have to stress about it. And just a little bit of work each time, it'll get done. And like, I'll be good. And I'm not going to stress about it. I did that last time, not doing it. What happens next? Procrastinate. So what happens the next day?
You're like, I can do it tomorrow. I still have 2 days.
Yeah, so I decide, no, I have some more time the next day. I have 2.5 more weeks. That is plenty of time. And so I wait so that I don't have to stress and rush. I still got time. Then what? Then I'll wait more. I'll rationalize to myself, no, 2 weeks is actually a good length of time to get a paper done. I work little by little. Still not stressing about it. I'm good. Till I get to a few days. All right, I have a few days to figure it out. What's my schedule like? Okay, yeah, no, I can work that out. Like, I'm decent at writing papers. Like, I'll figure that out. Oh, okay, I have all day tomorrow. I won't do anything else. I'll set my alarm, and I'll make sure that I commit to getting it done tomorrow. Okay, I will stay up all night tonight. I just won't sleep, and I will crank it out, and I will get this thing done. Okay, I'm going to set my alarm for 4:30 in the morning, and it will give me X amount of hours before I have to get this thing done and turn it in, and I can at least get a passing grade on this, and I'll be good. Wake up, 4:30 a.m. Okay, what's my overall GPA right now? What's my grade in this class? What is the overall weighted value of this assignment? If I turn it in tomorrow, I get half credit. And I am terrible at math, but when I'm doing this, I'm a wizard. I'm like, okay, I have a 76%. This is 7% of my grade, 50% of this, carry this. And I'm like, work this out at 4:30 a.m. And the conclusion of it is, okay, I'm going to sleep. Later on today, though, I'm going to crank this out. I'll turn it in tomorrow for half credit. My grade's still going to be good. Okay, if I turn it in by this day, I can get some credit and still pass my class and not have to retake it. And then the next thing, and I've experienced this whole chain, like this is my life. Okay, I'm not going to get credit for it now, so I'm not even going to worry about it. I can't do it. It doesn't even make sense. To, why do I have an F? Like, I didn't do that stupid paper, and I'm frustrated, and I don't like where I'm at now. I'm like stressed out. I hate the position that I've put myself in. And that affects other areas. I might have to retake that class. I get grounded. It affects other freedoms. And that's such like a petty description of that. But that compromise, that is exactly how it works. That's how all compromise works. It's this progressive thing that ends up getting me to some place that I never wanted to be. If you asked me 3 weeks ago, hey, do you want to fail this class and not do your paper and then be grounded and stress about it for the next 3 months? I'd be like, no, I would like to not do that, please. But yet, I find myself, and I did over and over in school, I found myself in this position of, I don't like where I'm at. I'm frustrated. How did I get here? It's fairly often that I meet with students, you guys, but also there's lots of graduated students that I keep up with. And it's not an uncommon thing for us to get together and them share with me that they're in some place that they don't want to be in. That some series of decisions and compromise has taken them somewhere where they're like, I don't like where I'm at. As a matter of fact, I hate this place. I'm miserable here. I don't want to be here. Sometimes they're in a place of regret, or they've become someone who they regret. Sometimes they're in disbelief. And I've heard people literally say to me, it's so cliche, that like, I can't believe I'm here. I can't believe this happened. I can't believe my life is like this. And it's interesting because some of those are the exact same people that years before thought, not me. Like, yeah, other people do that or have done that or that happens to them. That doesn't happen to me. Like, I'm too smart for that. I'm too spiritually mature to ever be that person. I love God too much to ever find myself in that spot. And they ignored the fact that compromise is a progression. It's a very fast downward slope. Compromise is a shortcut to all the places that we don't want to be. Compromise is as simple as just lowering our standard to find something acceptable, like I would do with my paper. It's unacceptable to procrastinate, rush it, get a low grade, until I decide, nah, I'm okay with that. It's unacceptable to get 50% on this paper that I'm going to turn in until I decide, okay, you know what? I'll do that. It's unacceptable to fail a class and have to retake it, to get in trouble, to be grounded, to have my parents frustrated with me until I find myself in that place. Compromise is a progression. And it's honestly, it's super rare that it happens in one shot. The disciple did not in one decision become the thief, and the thief did not in one decision become the traitor. All of these things was a progression of Judas deciding to compromise in small ways. I don't even know all of them, but I know that it took him time to become this guy. This guy would have looked down on this guy. Judas, a disciple, would have some things to say about a thief. A thief might have some things to say about a traitor who gets his friends killed and turns on God himself. I'm sure the disciple would have some things to say. Yet, all three of these guys are the same person. You guys can sit down. Backsliding, we use that term in church a lot. It's just the progression of lowering our standards over and over and over. And I think, and especially, I'm gonna refer to you as like church kids, those of you guys who maybe have grown up and spent more time in church. I think it's really easy to feel like other people mess up their lives. I don't do that. Maybe you have a solid family. Maybe you have some like wits about you. And it's really easy to feel like the things that you hear or see in other people's lives couldn't possibly be your life. I've sat with once God-loving, fantastic young people who were leaders, people who had their lives together, people from godly families, people who were serving and leading in different ways. And I've sat and talked with some of those people after they became thieves, after they became murderers, after they went to prison, after they became adulterers, homosexuals, homeless, ridden with different diseases from they don't know who, prostitutes, abusers, or molesters. All students from our youth group who would not be that one, who would have thought, that's not my life. Like, that's just a crazy, scary story that we tell to like make people not mess up. No, that's life. That's what compromise does. Compromise is a shortcut to all the places that we never thought we'd be, that we don't want to go, that we hope we never end up. That's what compromise is. That's what it does. There's a fourth guy. He's the same guy. He's the hopeless guy. And I'll be him. The hopeless guy, this is the saddest place to end up. He went from being a disciple to being a thief to being a traitor to being a man with absolutely no hope. In Matthew 27, 1 through 5, it says, "The morning came, and the chief priests and elders of the people conferred together against Jesus to put him to death. They bound him, they led him away, and they handed him over to Pilate, and then you know what happens from there. And it says, when Judas, who had betrayed him, the traitor, saw that he had been condemned, he felt remorse, and he returned the 30 pieces of silver to the chief priests and elders, saying, I have sinned by betraying innocent blood. But they said, what is that to us? You deal with that yourself. And he threw the pieces of silver into the temple sanctuary and left." Am I doing anything to make that happen, or is that just cool? So he threw the money into the sanctuary and left. But what happens after that? It's not up there. But it says, and then he went and he hanged himself. This Judas's end, this guy who became a traitor and just thought, I have no chance. I have no hope. What point is my life? Look at what I've become. Look at what I've done. And I'll say this, it's unfortunate. Like I said, I've met with a lot of people in a lot of places that they never wanted to be. And I've also had friends, students, get to this place, this level of hopelessness, where they felt like they had no option but to take their own life. They felt like, I can't be saved, I can't be redeemed, God can't forgive me because of what I've done or who I've become or what's happened to me. It's cool to know that if you are a believer in Jesus Christ in this room, none of us are hopeless. The idea of being hopeless flies in the face of our Savior and our defender and our hope. It's crazy to think, but even Judas, the once disciple, then thief, then traitor, he wasn't hopeless. He could have turned to God. He could have been redeemed. He didn't. He thought he had no hope and he gave up. There's no place that we can go that it's irredeemable, where we can't come back. And so I want to bring this up. If you feel hopeless, because I think we're all at some part of this progression. Judas is just like all of us. And depending on the choices that I make, what I decide to do, is going to affect who I become. And it's possible for any one of us to be any one of these guys. It is. And I want to caution you, if there's something inside you that pricks up, that feels like, not me. Like, I don't know what kind of people you're talking about or what kind of decisions they made, but like, that's not my life. You don't know my family. You don't know, like, I'm telling you, you need to be careful that you don't get this attitude that that's just other people and it doesn't affect me. Compromise will take you places you never, ever dreamed that you would go. It's true for everybody. So if we feel hopeless, it's good to know 1 John 1:9 says, if we confess our sins, he is faithful and just to forgive us, to cleanse us from all unrighteousness. He is faithful. It doesn't mean you had to be faithful for him to forgive you, but because he is faithful, if you feel hopeless, you can go to him and know he's going to forgive you and he's going to cleanse you. He's going to make you whole. He's going to make you clean. If you feel like the traitor, like maybe I'm not hopeless, but I don't know that I can go back. The ways that I've messed up, the lines that I crossed that I never thought I would cross. James 4:8 says, draw near to God and he'll draw near to you. Cleanse your hands, you sinners. Purify your hearts, you double-minded. God has a word for the sinners, the double-minded, those who have flip-flopped and are unsure. He says, draw near to me and I'll draw near to you. To the thief, maybe I was a disciple walking with God and I've just made some choices, things that I know I shouldn't be okay with, areas that I know I shouldn't dabble in, things that I'm hiding from friends or from my parents, and I know that this shouldn't be a part of my life. That's where the thief was. And I think the thief thought, well, I'm not a traitor. I'm not doing some other stuff other people are doing. It doesn't affect anyone. Some of us are in that spot. And if that's you, James 4:17 says, whoever knows the right thing to do and fails to do it, for him it is sin. So the areas that you sense conviction in your life, the things that you know you shouldn't be okay with, but are, and we have some individual convictions, but then there's also very clearly what the Word of God lines up for us. But if you know there are things that you shouldn't be okay with, areas that you have compromised, you lowered your standard from what you know it should be, you got to know that if you fail to do the right thing, to you it's sin. And so what does it look like to make things right? Maybe you need to confess, repent. Maybe you need to recognize every temptation that I have, in Judas's case, to steal money. Every temptation is an opportunity for me to step away from God or to draw closer to him by choosing to do what's right. And that's true for every one of us. You need to think about the choices that are in front of you as doing one of those two things. Maybe you need to make restitution. You need to make things right with some people. And if you are faithfully walking with Jesus right now and you are the disciple, Proverbs 4:23, it warns us and encourages us, keep your heart with all vigilance, with all diligence, for from it flow the springs of life. You got to be careful because no disciple was over the temptation to become a thief. And if you're living your life being okay with compromise, you got to know it's going to take you other places you don't want to go. And that's going to lead you to routes that are going to make you feel hopeless. 1 John 3:18 to the disciples, little children, let us not love in word or talk, but in deed and in truth. I have to be careful that the God I'm professing to follow, that my life is actually looking like I'm following him. I got to be careful I don't become hypocritical in looking at and criticizing others' actions while I have my own hidden stuff that I'm also indulging in. If you want to walk as a disciple, which we all can, we have to be careful of those things as they come up. I want to invite the band up here. This whole idea of compromise, there is not a single person in this room that is free from the temptation of compromise. Every one of us, myself included, every day we have temptations, opportunities to compromise in our lives. And like I said, it's a fast pass to spiritual decline. It's a shortcut to be away from God. It's a slippery slope that any leader in here, you can ask any of them, hey, tell me a story. Tell me a story about compromise in a life that you've seen. So many people, and you'll see it as you get older, end up in places that they never, ever wanted to be. Became people they never thought they would be, not in their worst nightmares. Because that slippery slope led them there real quick. So as we go into worship, I want to invite you guys to pray and ask God to strengthen your convictions, to help you to hold fast to his word, to show you areas of your life where maybe you've been okay with compromise. That temptation, like Judas had, it's just a few cents. It's just a small thing. It doesn't matter. It's not going to affect anything. I'm still doing good things. I'm still serving God. We need to recognize those areas. Recognize that they're like cancer. They don't stay in one area. It's not just like this one thing in my life. It'll grow. It will spread and affect other areas. And it might be scary or hard to admit where we've allowed compromise, but it's better than allowing it to fester and thinking that we're going to be able to deal with it later. The disciple had no idea that he was going to become a thief. The thief had no idea he was going to end up being the traitor. And the traitor didn't know the dead end that he was going to find himself at. As we go into worship, I want to encourage you to think about, Lord, where am I at? Am I faithfully following you? And if so, great. It's a reason to celebrate. That means God has been doing a work in you. That's awesome. But some of us know I've been pilfering from God, just like Judas taking whatever he was taking from the coin jar. Like, that's what I'm doing in my life. Maybe I've gone way over here, and I know I'm far from God. We all have an opportunity to get right. We all have an opportunity to come back. And so tonight as we worship, I'm going to ask you guys to do something. And we're going to have leaders up here on the sides to pray for you. But in the back, Faith, standing at that table, lifting her arms right now, her tiny arm barely in the air. Thank you, Faith. Faith has a basket back there. Just some pennies in it. It's not worth much. Don't think about getting a bunch of pennies. If you recognize some area in your life that, man, I've let compromise into my life. Just like Judas deciding he was going to be okay with taking from God, I've done that in my life. I want to invite you to go back and grab a single penny out of that basket and pray and think about, what is this thing that I've been okay with? This thing that I've allowed myself to take from God, to act like is not going to matter. No one's going to find out. I'm going to be fine. It's not going to affect anything. And if you want to give that thing to God, you want to confess, you want to repent, you want to deal with that, I'm going to invite you to bring that up here. Spend some time thinking about it, praying, dealing with the Lord. But bring it up here and just set it on the stage as an offering of God. I'm not gonna try to take from you. I'm not gonna try to hide this thing and act like you don't notice or like it doesn't matter or like it's just some small thing. And some of you guys need to get prayer. You're gonna need God's help to work through and deal with this. Us leaders that are standing on the sides, we're gonna be waiting to pray for you. So when you bring a coin up here, I encourage you, come over to the side so that we can pray for you. Or maybe there's other stuff going on that you need God to intervene in. We want to pray for you. But I invite all of us to assess that and to invite God to show us what that means for us.